In this episode, you'll learn how to create a routine that helps you to focus on what you're doing and what you need to do and what your goals are for the future in a way that stops life just passing you by. Hello and welcome. I'm here today with Suzanne Storrie. Welcome, Suzanne.
Hello, how are you? And great for thank you for having me.
Yeah, look, I saw your bio on Instagram, LinkedIn, and went, oh, we need to talk because you've just had this incredible life change and an incredible life. So you've got kids of your own, you've done the whole Brady Bunch thing, you've gone from being an in-office executive to, like I was just reading through it, the NRL, Layton, CBA, Qantas and Unisys, and like there is such a variety there. And then you did the whole tree change thing, bought a farm, and now you're a dairy farmer and you do executive coaching remotely, I'm assuming, or in person. But it's just like, oh my God, there is such a range of differences in what you've done over your life. And I just found that fascinating. And then we got talking about menopause too, because nobody knows about menopause.
I know.
So tell me a little bit about your background. I don't know where to start with it because there's so much of it. So yeah, how did you end up going? Let's start there. So executive in big companies, and then you went for the tree change to a farmer. What happened there?
Yeah. So during COVID, I was the crisis director for Insurance Australia Group, IAG. So, some of the brands that they have include, NRMA, CGU, etc. And that was pretty intense. So that was across, 9 countries, often 18 hours a day. And after that, I needed a rest. We'd always had, Col and I, once we got married, we had on our 5-year, 10-year plan that we would buy a farm. We both loved the South Coast. And so we just said, well, why don't we do it now? During COVID, it was a pretty challenging time, and particularly in Sydney, we got locked down. We bought the farm, and the farm is a lot of hard work, but it's a lot of joy as well. And I'd grown up on a farm, so not on the South Coast. So now we're at just outside of Jamberoo, a little place called Curramore. But I'd grown up sort of in the central west of West Wyalong, west of Ungary, out near Lake Angelico. And I'd always loved the farm. And so for me, having this opportunity to do both, because I really feel blessed. I have the it's not quite a dairy farm. We're in dairy country, but I grow dairy beef cattle, grass fed, and I also, and we've got sheep and chickens, a big orchard, huge veggie patches. The kids love it, but I also get my taste of the city and that connection with people, which I love, through executive coaching. And I'm also the chair of Chris O'Brien Lifehouse. And so I'm in Sydney regularly, but this really beautiful balance.
It's amazing that you've been able to create that, because it is such a different lifestyle, living in the city, doing that kind of high level, high pressure job, to moving out to, you were telling me, 60 odd acres with cattle, and then working the hours that you want to work, not the hours that you need to work because of the company. What was that transition like? Because that must have been, I mean, I know you needed a rest, but it must have been a shock to the system as well.
It was definitely a shock to the system. I think transitions are hard. Even transitions that you planned for are hard, because the planning might not be, and how you visualize it in your head and potentially in your heart might not quite be the same experience as the reality. And so the things that I have found challenging, sometimes the juggle. So I will go from being, in farm clothes, quick change in the car, to Sydney, in work clothes, corporate clothes. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't quite work. There'll be traffic snarls or something will go wrong on the farm. One morning I got up, was ready to go to work, ready to leave at 6, and could hear a cow bellowing in the back paddock, and thought, okay, I need to go and check on what's happening, what that is, and had to get changed back into farm gear, go across to the back paddock, and found that one of the young calves had died. And so then had to leave my husband to deal with that while I went back to the house, got changed back into corporate gear, and got in the car and went to Sydney. So it is a juggle, but I think the thing that I've loved the most over the last 3 years has been the increase in my practical skills. So I have my confidence has grown enormously, because there are problems every day on the farm, and I just have to figure them out. And so, learning how to weld, learning how to do plumbing, I've learned how to do electric fencing, like all these things that I didn't have experience in, even as a child, I now can do. And so I have confidence in facing problems and challenges that I didn't have before. So it's really grown my resilience.
That's really interesting that you say that, because it's, for a lot of people, doing the kind of job you were doing is the pinnacle of success. But it's interesting that you've found a completely different kind of satisfaction, and it's increased your confidence in doing something like farming. That's fascinating.
I always loved farming. Even as a little girl, I loved being outside doing farm jobs. So I think, it's sort of, for me, coming back full circle. I grew up in a family with 2 brothers, and it was always made known to me that they would go onto the farms that we had in the family. And so it was sort of make your own way in the world. And so, I, after boarding school, went to Sydney Uni and was at women's college and studied economics, then stayed in the city because I got a job in the city. And that then sort of was the start of my corporate career, which I loved. And, the thing I loved the most was leading teams, leading large teams and leading large teams through change. And so, I've had to use lots of those skills over the last couple of years to lead me through change.
I was just going to go there. How did that support you? How do you lead people through change? Because most of us are quite naturally resistant to change. We like the familiar and doing anything that's unfamiliar, particularly if we're already stressed or under some kind of pressure from something. Making a change will be just far too much. And I'm thinking here, say we've got stuff going on at home with one of the kids, one of the kids is struggling. You just don't have the emotional capacity to go, I hate my job, but I just cannot think about that right now because I've got to focus on whatever's going on with the kids. How do you juggle those? How do you deal with those things?
So I'm pretty good at that focus, which is, this is the thing that I need to focus on right now. So, sometimes so much so that when my kids were little and I'd be, working away at home, concentrating on something I was doing, that would be the opportunity. They'd come and say, they had this line, which was, Mum, will you buy me a Porsche? Which they knew was never going to happen. But it was just kind of this sort of funny joke that they had. That was just to remind me that they were there and that they needed some attention, whatever it was. So that was, that ability to really concentrate. And my husband says even now that, I can just get lost in whatever it is that I'm doing and have that hyper focus for the period of time that I need to. Sometimes on the farm, I feel like it's just in time learning. We had, a dam that we had cleaned out. We've had a lot of rain over the last couple of months. Some plumbing hadn't been finished on that, and I knew more rain was coming. So, I had to go and figure out how big the pipe was, go to the irrigation shop, buy the connecting pipe, go and plumb it in and wait for the rain. And fortunately it held, which is great. But sometimes it's just that just-in-time learning. I think leading people through change, I think the first thing is doing a lot of listening. and that is really understanding where they're at, what their challenges are, what the organisation's challenges are, and figuring out a plan together on how to improve it or to shift to whatever the destination is. Because if you don't do the listening and work with the people, it's going to be, rejection, and it's just not going to work. And so lots of conversations, lots of engagement, lots of getting them involved so that they can be the champions of whatever the change is and have their fingers in the pie and own the change, and creating wins in that so that, you've got visible progress. It's like anything, we all want to see that we're making progress. And certainly in the coaching work that I do with lots of clients, one of the tools I use is sphere of silence. And it's a great framework for supporting people to see that they're making progress towards their goals. Because in the beginning, one of the biggest challenges is that people feel like they're not making change, they're not making that improvement, and they give up. Whereas the sphere of silence framework really helps you to see on a regular basis that you're making even small steps towards that larger change that you want, and that you are making progress.
So what is sphere of silence? I've never heard of that.
It's a framework that you can do daily, and it's 60 minutes, or you can do a cut down version, 3 times 30 minutes at a time. Ideally it would be daily, but if we think about that sort of that hour, that 60-minute version, the first 10 minutes of that is really reflection, and that is, what did I do yesterday? What did I get done yesterday? What did I achieve? Yeah. How did that feel? What were the great bits of yesterday? The second 10 minutes is writing down, and so this is not on technology. This is, trying to do it old school. Writing down, what is it that I need to achieve today? What do I need to get done? And, this is if you're doing it in the morning. And then that last 30 minutes is, what are the next steps that I could take on some of my medium and long-term goals? And so that first 30 minutes is very much, focused on, what have I been achieving and making progress on, and what do I need to do next today and longer run than that, medium and longer term goals. And so it really gets you focused on that. And that's the bit that builds your confidence, because you can see, I'm actually getting stuff done. Like, I'm actually working towards things, and I'm doing things that are aligned to my long-term goals. So it's not just, stuff. It's stuff that's aligned to your goals. So that's the first half hour. The second half hour is 3 parts. The first part is reading, and that might be, reading. I'll just show you what I'm reading at the moment. It's kind of fun. Graham Creed's Weatherman Goes Bush book that a friend gave me over Christmas. And so, it could be 10 minutes of reading of that. And then the second 10 minutes is reflecting on what you've read and what could be applicable. What would you like to incorporate in your life out of that? Is there something that had meaning in that period of reading? And by writing it down and doing it by hand, you're also helping your memory. So, one of the unfortunate things is that my dad died of Lewy body's dementia about 5 years ago, and my mum has got dementia. And so I'm pretty focused on me doing whatever I can to do to be healthy into my 80s and my 90s. And so making sure that I'm using my brain and training my brain is pretty important to me. So this actually helps with that as well. So that's that second part of that 10 minutes in that second half hour. And then the final thing is 10 minutes of meditation. And meditation is not something I'm great at, but I am persistent and persevere because I know it's so good for me. And I've been, for years practicing meditation, dipping in, dipping out, but over the last probably 18 months, I've been much better at it. So, a period of meditation during the day and then regular meditation at night. So I'm incorporating, a routine before bed of turning off devices, stretching, all the normal things, clean your teeth, get ready for bed, clean your face, all that sort of stuff, but also then meditation before I sleep.
So that seems like a big, an hour seems like a massive thing to do. And a lot of people would go, I just have not got time to do that. What is the advantage of doing that? Why do you have people do this?
Yeah. And I agree. It's a big commitment to do it, particularly if you're doing the hour version. So often I start clients off on just do it for 30 minutes 3 times a week. So they do a cut down version. So that first, half hour gets shortened to 15 minutes, 5, 5, 5. The second part gets shortened to 15 minutes, 5, 5, 5. The advantage, and certainly the feedback I get from clients, is that their confidence, as I talked to you about before, their confidence increases because they can see that they're making progress. They can see that they're making progress on things that are important to them. So I use this tool in conjunction with some other tools, one which is a long-term goal setting tool called Wheel of Life. And it's helping people to think about what goals do they want to have, not just this year, but 15 years out. Who do they want to be 15 years out? So I was introduced to that tool in about 2006, and it changed my life because it was really the first time that, I was a single mum. It was pretty hard. I was studying, I was working full time, and I was just in the thick of it and really felt like I didn't have a lot of hope for the future. I just was, trying to get through the weeks and the days. And so that tool really allowed me to think that I could choose the life that I wanted. And that's what I've done. And it's multifaceted. So it's across, health, career, relationships. What sort of home do you want to have? Where do you want to live? How are you contributing to your community? What legacy do you want to leave in the world? So it's sort of a multifaceted tool that if you spend the time thinking about those things, you're much more likely, the research says you're 42% more likely to achieve your goals if you write your goals down. And then, the second part to that is you're much more likely to achieve your goals if you reflect on your goals regularly and check in with them. And that sphere of silence tool that we just talked about, that really helps you to do that. For some people, it might be the first time they've been exposed to meditation, as an example. And so for them, that could be the takeaway, which is that quietens their brain. It lets them disconnect from, whatever the busyness of their day and week is, and helps them to sleep if they're doing the practice at night time, let's say. For other people, the takeaway is, and some clients I have struggle to focus because they're on digital devices all the time. And so, they make comments, which is, I just can't read a book anymore. Well, this helps them on that journey of connecting back to actually enjoy reading. I'm going to do it just for 10 minutes. And then I'll think about what I read, for the next 10 minutes, or I'll read for 5 minutes, or I'll just read for 10 minutes, and that could be it. But it will get them back into the habit of, this is actually enjoyable, and I can focus if I give myself permission to sit and not be distracted by other things.
I think that's a key, isn't it? Sit and not be distracted by other things, because personally I find I get to the end of the day quite often, or the end of the week, and I go, what happened to the week? And feeling like every day is the same and I'm not getting anywhere. And I am, but my experience is I'm not doing what I should be, or not doing as much as I could be doing. I'm not doing the right things. I got distracted by blah. And yet I don't actually waste any time. So, and I think a lot of people experience that, don't they? That wheel, you're just on a treadmill doing stuff.
Yeah. And certainly, one of the phrases that I love, and I certainly use this as a focus, one of the years that I was leading a big team was do less to achieve more, which is, and that is achievable if you focus on what your priorities are and you don't do other things. So one of the things, I had to learn to do was to say no. And one of the ways that I got myself to being okay with that, because that's not something, I'm used to being a people pleaser and saying yes and trying to help. And sometimes that would be at my personal cost. Like I would do something for somebody else rather than getting an hour's sleep that I needed, or do something for somebody else rather than exercising. And I was thinking about this morning. I am in a phase of my life, the kids have grown up. Yes, we still, have a lot of time with the kids, that they, come down to the farm and we spend time with them, or we see them in other places up in Sydney. But I'm now at a period of my life where I can be a bit more selfish about how I spend my time. And that would never have happened. I just didn't allow myself to do that before. So learning how to say no, and one of the tips that I'll give you is, that's a great opportunity for somebody else. Thank you for thinking of me. I can't take that on right now, but I think that's a great opportunity for someone else. And there might be 2 or 3 people that you could recommend. But it's, because not every opportunity you're going to be able to do. You have a limited capacity, limited same number of hours as everyone else has in the day. And if it's something that's important to you, say yes. But if it's something that's important to them and is not in your plan, then have the courage to say no. Because we can get all distracted on, helping others, which is great, but it might come at not achieving your goals.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because that goes back to, I'm remembering same thing about around 2006, and somebody had a chart. She said, it was our business coach, and she said, okay, so that thing, is that on your what was it? It's on my critical path. Is it on your critical path or their critical path? And there was this whole chart that she did. And to assess every single thing that came in, about, can you explain that? Because I've kind of forgotten it, but it was ringing a bell with that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So, there will be many more opportunities for you. People will be saying, can you help me with this? Can you do this? Would you be interested in doing that? There'll be many more opportunities coming to your inbox on, people ringing you, people that you, see in person than you could ever do. And so having to be a bit clinical, and there's a great book called Essentialism, which is a fantastic read and really helped support me to learn to say no, which was great. But that, I'll put the critical path concept in a slightly different way, which is, I say it, you are the star of your movie. Yeah. And so, is this a scene in your movie that you want to be the star of and in, or is it for somebody else? Because because other people will try and co-opt you into, helping them, doing things that would be fantastic for them and might be right for them, but might not be right for you right now. Some of them might be, and you can assess that, but it's a hell of a lot easier to assess that if you're clear about your values and your goals. And again, back to, your goal setting, much more likely to achieve your goals if they align to your values. Where people, and certainly my clients, find the most conflict is where they're spending time doing things that are not aligned to their values. And so getting crystal clear on that is the start. That's where I always start with my clients.
It's funny you say that, because that's come up for me in the last 12 months. I've been feeling a bit off for several years. And my husband split up about a year ago now. And I've realized that most of that feeling of things not being right was actually because slowly, I'd moved away from being in alignment with what's important to me and doing the things that are going to move my life forwards and make me feel good. And it's not about being selfish, but it's almost like it was so little by little over the years, I didn't realize what was going on. And it's only having the opportunity to sit down, reassess things and go, okay, that's actually not important to me. What is important to me is this. And then starting to realign myself constantly. And it's,
Yep.
and I'm surprised like all the time. A couple of nights I sat down and went, oh my God, I've just realised blah. And I hadn't realised that. And it's so far away from what is important to me. And it's just, yeah. And it's, I think where I'm going with this is I think that's the case for a lot of women when they get to midlife, because we've maybe given up stuff, or we've done stuff because of the kids, or because of our jobs, or because of our husbands, or whatever, or we're a single mum, all of those things. And we don't realise just how far away we are from what's important to us. And that can be the basis of that feeling of, oh, I'm not happy. I think.
Exactly. And that can bubble up in lots of different ways, and, you know, can impact your health. It can definitely impact, you know, your relationships and how you turn up to relationships. So getting that sorted, you know, spending the time reflecting, and then working out what do you want your next chapter to be, and you getting to choose. You know, that's the stuff that I love doing with clients, and working with clients to help them navigate that transition, that process.
And that's one of the things you do with the silence and everything. So just as a complete random question here, do you mainly work with women or men, or is it both? And is there a difference in the way they do this? Is there a difference in how they respond to it, and the way it impacts them?
Yeah, for sure. So I work with both men and women. I think with women generally, it has been either transitions, which we've just talked about, you know, that stage of life where, you know, what is it I want to do now? You know, with the career coaching, the business coaching that I do, particularly in the city, a lot of that is supporting them through their leadership journeys and their career progression. So it's a little bit different. And then one of the things that we've set up on the farm is Twin Figs Farm workshops, which are sort of retreats for people where they can come for 1 or 2 days. And on the first day, it is really focused on what are their values, you know, doing reflection work, you know, what's working in my life, what do I want to change, who do I want to spend time with, who do I want to be, what do I want to learn? We're wired to learn. And so thinking about, you know, what do I want to learn in the future, this year, you know, next year? So getting them to the reflection, the values work, getting crystal clear on, you know, what are their values, and then that Wheel of Life 15-year goal setting, and giving themselves permission to dream about what sort of life do they want to live in 15 years' time, and then working backwards, that steel thread through that of, you know, across all the different categories, what are the next steps that they need to take to make that a reality. I think men go through exactly the same challenge. You know, from my experience, they're thinking at different stages of their life, you know, is this working? Is this not working? What do I need to change? And so the toolkit is flexible enough to accommodate different life stages. Does it present itself a little differently? Potentially. But I see, you know, in the conversations that I have with people, with men and women, common challenges, and then common solutions, which is great as well. So for some people, it is, you know, helping them to remember to be a bit selfish and take the time to exercise, as an example, or to get enough sleep, or to connect with friends. We know now, like, there's a huge body of research that says that, you know, in order to live a long and fulfilled life, connection with others is critical to that, you know, having a long and happy and healthy life. So, you know, getting them to focus on what are their relationships and the quality of their relationships. That's one that I'm focused on this year because, you know, potentially, and I certainly felt it a little last year, being on the farm, you can be a bit isolated. You know, even though I'm only 20 minutes from Kiama, you know, 2 hours from Sydney, but when you're actually out here, it can be very quiet, which is great. but I'm making more of an effort to make friends in the local community, doing things like, taking up golf again. Cole and I are doing golf lessons together. We're doing that as part of our date days, but I'm going to join, women's golf competition. And that's an opportunity to connect with other local women and to start a book club out here on the farm, so that it incorporates lots of things. As I said, reading's really important again for that longevity and keeping your brain active, but it gives me an opportunity to connect with people. So lots of great things sort of happening out here at the farm, and it incorporates some of the stuff that we've been talking about. The second day of the retreat, we really focus on that healthy and wellness aspect of life. So we go through, nutrition and hydration, and I'm studying nutrition at the moment. So nutrition and hydration, sleep, exercise, stress management, and then turning all that research into practical goals. And Atomic Habits, a great book. So how do you actually convert, this is a great idea, this is a goal that I have, into the actuality of doing the doing, so that the outcome is what you want, because that's what you want to achieve. Like, it's not just the, writing the goal down on a piece of paper. It's like, how do I actually make that and bring that to life, make it happen and bring it to life? So I'm really enjoying the workshops as well. We've got one coming up on the 8th and the 9th of March. And they're really enjoyable because they're, again, a mix of men and women of different ages. We've had some people who have been, in their late teens, early 20s, right through to, people in their 70s. So it's not that it's age bound either. And there is joy in bringing people together. The acronym, IRL, in real life. I know it's fantastic that we can do this, virtually, but there's also absolutely joy and, a really human element in being together in person.
What's been your biggest challenge over the years?
Perfectionism. I wish I had learnt a long time ago. I learnt it later in my career than I should have, and it was probably back to partly being because of my career. My first training, so I did an economics degree and then did a master's in tax law, and being right, getting it correct was really important. And so I applied that level of diligence to everything. And so, in my early career as a leader would have been an absolute pain in the ass to work for. And I improved as I got older and more experienced, because yes, there are some things that need to be perfect. And, I'll give examples of board papers where they absolutely need to be right, because the board, of companies will then be making decisions based on the information that you're putting to them. And you want to make sure that you're presenting that accurately, but also that you're making it easy for board members to read the paper and make a decision, be informed. But that level of diligence doesn't need to apply to everything that you do in everyday life. And one of those that I had to learn was in relation to having a clean house. So I was a single mum, I was working full time, 3 little kids, they're studying. And so I had to learn that it didn't have to be perfect, and that was okay. And I wasn't a failure because, the floor didn't get washed that week or whatever it was, because it was actually more important that sometimes I got sleep, that the kids and I went to the park and actually played and laughed with each other. There were things that were a higher priority, but I was pretty tough on myself, and I'm a lot more gentle with myself now. Doesn't mean I let myself get away with stuff and make excuses, but I'm just more thoughtful about where I spend time and where I can not waste effort. And so, with my team, I used to say to them, is working on this for another hour going to improve the value for the client, if it was a client that we were working for? If that's so, then, continue to work on it. Is working on it for another 6 hours really going to improve the value so much more? And if it was, then that's fine. But often you can spend 6 hours just tweaking something and it's actually not going to make a difference. And so I've got better at making those judgment calls on when will it make a difference and when won't it. And that's both professionally but also personally. And that could be actually the most important, hour I can spend today is sitting and having a cup of tea with one of the kids, or working on the farm fencing and chatting to them about their week and their life. And that's the most important thing right now.
Did you manage, because to have a full-time job, 3 young kids, and be studying at the same time as a single parent, how did you arrange your time so that you fulfilled all those roles? I mean, I can imagine that you could not be a perfectionist when you got that situation going on.
Yeah. So there were a couple of funny stories. The kids got color-coded. And so that meant that just made my life easier. So color-coded in terms of, undies, lunch boxes, socks, all sorts of stuff. And they had, boxes at the front door, which were, red, blue and green, and they knew theirs was a box. So if I was missing a green lunchbox, I knew which child, hadn't got their lunchbox, retrieved their lunchbox out of their bag. So I did, quick tips and tricks like that. My parents were super supportive. So, mum and dad, really at the time when I split up with my ex-husband, they let me 10 grand so I could move out, got sorted and set up. But even beyond that, they really were actively involved. So, mum would come, every couple of weeks, or if I needed to travel for work, she would just come and stay, so that I knew that the kids would be, loved, supported, cared for while I was away. So I was super fortunate that I had their support, and they lived only a couple of hours away. They just lived in Kiama, actually. So it was really easy. I think my friend network, my girlfriends particularly, were really, really helpful. Just to have those conversations, when things were going well, but also when things were not going well. For a period of time, I didn't do stuff that I really should be doing, like exercise. Like I was probably exercising once a week, not, once a day. It was just a matter of making decisions around, what I could do, what I couldn't do. While the kids were little and I had that going on, I was working, studying. I took up painting again. I hadn't painted since I'd, been a teenager, because painting was something that I could do to relax and get into flow at home while the kids were in bed sleeping. So that was, a way that I found to really, have a focus and bring joy and disconnect from work. It was pretty challenging. It wasn't ideal by any stretch of the imagination. But, when I think about and I talk to the kids about, what do they remember of their childhoods, and what are some of their happy memories, or, what have they reflected on that they learnt from me? So certainly work ethic they learnt, and they all have that in spades. But they remember cooking. That's one of the activities that we did together, as a family. We would always have Sunday night, roast dinners, and the kids would get involved in cooking, or they'd be helping me, make dessert or cakes or whatever it was. And they're all excellent cooks. I've got 3 boys, and they're all great cooks. So, their girlfriends are pretty happy about that. And it's nice hearing that. They remember that we would do that. We would have music on. We'd be dancing in the kitchen. So it's funny the things that they remember. And the foods are very connecting and loving part of life. So, I'm glad that's part of what they remember. And they'll ring me and say, Mum, can I have that recipe? Can you tell me what's in that? Or, Mum, I'm coming down and can you cook this? So they still get in their special requests.
It's funny that it never changes, does it? I ended up starting, I've got a little website going that's got all my recipes on for the kids. I'm fed up of sending recipes to all the different kids. Oh, go and look on there.
Yeah. Well, this is one of our projects we talked about over Christmas is we're going to have a family and friends cookbook, which will be fantastic. So that's one of the projects for this year so that people can contribute. And now our family is getting broader because, as I said, I got married 5 years ago. So we've got between us 7 kids. Some of those 7 kids have got partners. Those partners have families. Those families have special recipes. And so it's all getting incorporated into the cookbook with, photos of, whoever, if this is, grandma and it's her scone recipe or somebody else and their recipe and a little story about that. And I'm sure that it's going to be, something that they'll all appreciate in the years that come, but just, such a fun project to work on with them.
That is a great idea. I really like that.
Yeah, because it's the things that really matter. It's, it's family, it's connection. Food has a big role to play in that. And that's part of, that was part of Coles and my driver for creating Twin Fids Farm, because we love food, but we love healthy food and the opportunity to grow our own and eat our own and to show our kids and one day grandkids where food comes from and that it can be delicious and nutritious, eating with the seasons, pickling, preserving, making jams, taking stuff straight out of the garden and bringing it straight in and eating it, which is fantastic. But it takes a lot of work. And I think that's also part of the joy is that you see, from a seed, growing something, it just amazes me, planting something and then it turns into, this big stalk of corn. Or we had, I think my big discovery last year was that celery actually tastes nice. Like I grew a crop of celery and it was fantastic. For months and months and months, we just had this amazing, probably 8 or 9 plants of celery that were big bushes, and I could just go off and cut celery, but it actually tasted like something. It was just, fantastic. So it's just been, a joyful experience being able to, and I know we're very fortunate being able to grow our own. But before we had the farm, I actually converted the garden when Colin and I got married at his house into 5 veggie patches. So the lawn was replaced with 5 veggie patches, and that was the beginning of our, grow it for ourselves. And I guess you just have to find what brings you joy. There are days I'm out in the paddock and the cows will do something crazy. They all have different personalities. The calves will be chasing each other around, and I'll just notice that I've got a huge grin on my face. And you take those little moments that bring you joy and remember those, because there are times in life where it's more challenging than that. But having that hope that there'll be those happy moments and moments of joy and creating those moments is important.
We're going to have to wrap up in a minute, and there's so many topics that we haven't covered that I wanted to. That's okay. What is, just to finish off, what is the biggest difference between your life and in terms of the things you enjoyed and the things that you missed, the 2 sides of it, the positives and the negatives, from being in the city where you were a few years ago to where you are now? What are the differences that you notice?
Now I am much more peaceful as a person. So as I said, I've got more confidence in my ability to deal with challenges, and I think I was pretty good at that before, but this is farming's a whole nother level, and it's a very practical level. And I think my dad would be really proud of me if he could, and his ashes are actually planted under a tree on the farm. But I think that confidence that I've got now in being able to face challenges and deal with them very calmly. I think the thing I miss the most is the teams that I led. I really enjoyed seeing individuals in my team succeed and us succeed as a team. towards whatever goals we'd set for ourselves for the year or the years that we were, looking at in terms of horizon. I really miss that. But I don't miss that enough because I've had a few opportunities where people have said, oh, would you be interested in this role coming back into, executive career? The thing that I love the most now is that, yes, I've got this diverse hybrid life and I wouldn't give it up because this brings me joy. And the challenge of having to juggle those two, what seem very different, sometimes they are very different ways of living, I wouldn't give this opportunity up to go back into an executive career, which is really, they're demanding. They're, 6 days a week and sometimes all consuming. And I'm just not at that stage of my life anymore. There are other things I wanted to learn and do. And that was the discussion Colin and I really had, which was we could continue to do executive roles and they were very fulfilling and, gave us, meaning and status and, clearly, money as well. We were well paid. This life's very different and it doesn't come with many of those advantages, but it comes with different versions of success. Success is not all about the money you're earning. It's much broader than that. So for me, it was time to look at a different way of living and a different chapter because I don't want to look back at the end of my life and say, well, this was just the narrow view of me and what I did. I want to explore, other things that bring me joy, and that's what I'm getting to do now.
Can you tell people how to get in touch with you? And it will be on the webpage that goes with the podcast as well.
Absolutely. Probably the two easiest ways. So LinkedIn, Suzanne Storrie, on LinkedIn, or on Instagram, Suzanne Storrie, or Twin Figs Farm, which is our property. So any of those ways and you'll be able to connect with me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. This has been a journey of discovery. It's been great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Karen. I've really enjoyed it. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Life After Menopause. We look forward to talking to you next week. Make sure you connect with us on social media and click on the subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. See you next time.